There is a moment, quiet and devastating, when you realize that the exhaustion you feel is not from the work you have done, but from the people you have refused to stop carrying. You have been pouring yourself into cups that are never grateful, never full, and never yours to fill. Today that changes. We live in a world that quietly teaches us that our worth is measured by how much we give. From childhood, many of us learned that love had to be earned, that approval required sacrifice, and that saying no was a form of cruelty. These lessons, absorbed without our permission, became the architecture of how we relate to every person who enters our lives. And so you became the person who never says no, the one who answers the phone at midnight, who absorbs other people's moods like a sponge, who shrinks in rooms where they should be standing tall. You told yourself this was kindness, but kindness that destroys you is not a virtue. It is a wound pretending to be generous. Toxic connections do not always arrive wearing masks of cruelty. Many of them arrive wearing the face of someone you love. They are the friend who only calls when things are falling apart for them. They are the family member who knows exactly how to make you feel responsible for their pain. They are the partner who rewards you for shrinking and punishes you for growing. Recognizing this pattern is not betrayal. It is the beginning of recovery. Energy is not infinite. It is one of the most finite and precious resources you will ever possess, and every single day you are making choices about where it goes. When you give your emotional energy to people who take without reciprocating, who manipulate without remorse, or who meet your vulnerability with exploitation, you are not being loving. You are depleting the very source of everything you hope to become. Now let us speak about control, because the need to control is often rooted not in arrogance but in fear. When life feels chaotic, when relationships feel unstable, the mind reaches desperately for anything it can manage. You try to control outcomes, you rehearse conversations, you anticipate every possible way things could go wrong so you can prevent disaster before it arrives. But here is the truth that will finally let you breathe. You cannot love people into loving you back, and you cannot think your way into safety. Release is not giving up. Release is the radical act of choosing your own peace over the illusion of control. When you stop trying to manage every outcome, when you stop bracing for impact at every turn, something extraordinary happens. Space opens up in your mind and your heart that was never there before. That space is where clarity lives. That space is where your real life begins. Boundaries are not walls. They are not acts of hostility or coldness, and they are not punishments you inflict on people who have hurt you. A boundary is simply the line where you end and someone else begins. It is the declaration that your time, your emotions, your body, and your mental health are yours, and that they deserve protection. Building a boundary without guilt requires understanding one foundational truth. You are not responsible for how other people receive your self-respect. People who have depended on your boundarylessness will push back when you finally establish limits. They will call you selfish. They will remind you of everything they have done for you. They will make your boundary feel like an act of war. This is not evidence that your boundary is wrong. It is evidence that the boundary was desperately needed. Now we must face the voice inside. Because often the most relentless source of damage in your life is not outside of you at all. It is the inner critic, the internal narrator that rehearses your failures in vivid detail, that greets your hopes with a list of reasons they will never work, that compares you endlessly to everyone else and always finds you wanting. This voice learned its lines from somewhere, and its goal is not to protect you. Its goal is to keep you small. Silencing the inner critic does not mean performing forced positivity or pasting affirmations over open wounds. It means developing the awareness to notice when that voice begins to speak, to name it, and to consciously choose a different narrative. You are not your worst moments. You are not the version of yourself that someone else needed you to be so that they could feel better. You are the sum of your capacity for growth, and that capacity has no ceiling. Letting go of the past is perhaps the most misunderstood instruction in all of human self-improvement. People hear it and imagine forgetting, as if the solution is to simply erase what happened. But the past cannot be erased. It can only be reframed. Letting go means deciding that what happened to you will no longer determine what happens next. It means grieving fully, honoring your own pain, and then making the deliberate choice to stop handing your present moment over to something that has already ended. There is grief in walking away from what has hurt you, even when walking away is the right thing to do. We grieve the version of the relationship we always hoped it would become. We grieve the time we spent waiting for someone to be who they showed us they were never going to be. Allow that grief. It is real and it is honest. But do not let grief become a permanent address. You were not meant to live there. Redirecting your energy toward personal growth is not a selfish act. It is the most responsible thing you can do for yourself and for everyone who genuinely matters in your life. When you invest in your own healing, when you tend to your own mental and emotional health with the same devotion you once reserved for people who never asked how you were doing, you become someone with something real to give. Whole people build whole relationships. Depleted people can only repeat old cycles. The confidence that comes from this work is unlike anything you have ever borrowed from someone else's approval. It is not the confidence of being liked or validated. It is the confidence of knowing who you are when no one is watching, of knowing your own values so clearly that you can no longer be talked out of them, of standing in a room and feeling at home in your own presence. This is what detachment ultimately delivers. Not coldness, not isolation, but a sovereign self. You have carried enough. You have explained yourself enough, shrunk yourself enough, and waited long enough for people who were never going to choose you the way you deserved. The life that is waiting for you is not built on the ruins of your self-sacrifice. It is built on the mornings you woke up and chose yourself first, on the conversations you refused to have that cost you nothing but shame, on the nights you sat in your own silence and finally found it peaceful. Stop chasing what hurts you. Start building what heals you. That is not just advice, that is the most important decision of your life. If this message found you at the right moment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to History Retold for more stories about the most powerful battles ever fought, the ones within ourselves,